The sun hadn't even cracked the horizon when the riders rolled into bitter wind, a dusty town forgotten by most maps and memories. Sheriff Amos Carter had been up for hours, nursing a burnt pot of coffee, sitting in his creaky wooden chair outside his office. At 39, Amos was a worn man. 7 years as sheriff in a place too small for war, too raw for peace. He'd once ridden with scouts during the Apache campaigns, knew every ridge and gulch near Chiricahua, but a bullet in his thigh had changed all that. Now, he kept his badge tucked inside his belt, and jail cells unlocked unless absolutely necessary. That morning, two riders approached, one in a government-issued coat, the other too polished and clean for this ragged town. Amos straightened when he saw the third figure trailing them, a barefoot Apache woman, her wrists bound with rope, walking in the dirt with red, scraped feet. She didn't look around, didn't speak. The marshal dismounted, brushing dust off his pants as if the place offended him. "Sheriff Carter," he said like he owned the porch already. Amos nodded, eyes drifting back to the woman. The marshal handed over a dirt-stained transfer order from Fort Bowie, instructing Amos to hold her for 3 days until a military escort could arrive. The paper labeled her as property now, no trial, no jury, no arrest date. Just a cold directive to keep one native female detainee captured near Fort Thomas. A bounty hunter chuckled when Amos asked if she had a name. "Most don't talk," he said, "especially not when they know what's coming." The woman's face showed a bruise under her cheekbone, her dress torn and dirty, but her eyes weren't empty. They were watchful, quiet, unbroken. "Where's she headed?" Amos asked. "Auction," the marshal said flatly. "Domestic work. Maybe worse. Not our problem." Amos folded the order away and said, "I'll hold her." No roughness, no yanking, just a quiet lead inside the jail. The woman followed without a fight, stepping into the cell and locking the door behind her with a heavy clang. She turned once, eyes cold and steady. Amos said nothing, sat back at his desk, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The whole thing felt wrong. It wasn't justice, it was cleanup, the kind that leaves scars no one talks about. He thought of Noah, a boy he'd once seen trying to shield his sister with a slingshot, only to lose her. He lit the stove, slid a tin plate with beans and water under the bars. She didn't touch them. Not yet. That night, Amos left the cell door unlocked. By morning, she was still there, sitting cross-legged, hands resting calmly. He brought her another plate and water this time. She took the water. No words passed between them, but something shifted. By afternoon, Amos hitched his mule, brought the cart around, opened the cell door, and said, "You're coming with me." No questions, no promises. She stood, silent, and followed. The ride out was quiet, wheels creaking, dust swirling in the dry wind as they passed the edge of town and headed toward a small wooden cabin nestled among scrub and dry trees. The cabin was humble, one room, maybe two, with a warped porch step and a smoke-blackened chimney. Amos stopped, climbed down. "You can stay here," he said, voice neither soft nor hard. "Nobody'll find you." She studied him, said nothing, but stepped down on her own. Inside was bare but clean, a stove, a cot, a wooden bench near the hearth. She sat. Amos went outside for firewood. When he returned, she was still there, hands folded, eyes tracking him with that same quiet alertness. That night, curled near the hearth without blankets or words, she wasn't broken, just tired. Amos draped a wool blanket over her shoulders without touching her skin, no questions asked. He didn't expect thanks. He knew she wasn't going anywhere, not then, not anytime soon, and neither was he. Morning brought a stillness thick with the scent of mesquite and pine smoke. Amos stirred the fire, feeling the familiar ache in his thigh. The woman, Ta, sat near the hearth wrapped in the same blanket, eyes scanning like a scout reading a horizon before trouble. She hadn't run, not that night or any other. Amos listened for creaks, soft footsteps, any sign of escape. Nothing. He set a bowl of cornmeal mash and dried beef before her. She reached for the spoon cautiously, ate in silence. Amos watched her, thinking about what she might have seen, too worn for a soldier's posture. No defiance, just survival. Her bracelet caught his eye, a worn leather knot, the kind mothers braided after a child survived their first harsh winter. He'd missed it before. "What's your name?" he asked. She blinked, eyes meeting his briefly, voice low. "Ta." That was all she gave him. She tended her injured foot quietly, applying salt and dabbing at the wounds. The days settled into a rhythm, Amos chopping wood and repairing the shed, Ta sweeping floors and mending clothes, sharing the silence that held no questions and no demands. One evening, she broke the quiet. "When will they come?" she asked. "Soon," he said, pouring coffee. "Maybe not tomorrow, but they'll come." "You lied to them." He nodded, said you ran. Easier truth to believe. She didn't thank him, but the edge in her voice softened. Their days blended into one another, planting beans in the garden, fixing the roof together, cooking simple meals. Ta wore the worn boots Amos found for her, and for the first time, she moved with less caution, less fear. One afternoon, Amos pulled out a bundle of faded prairie dresses belonging to his sister, who had died years ago. "Might fit you better," he said quietly. Ta touched the fabric, then slipped into one without a word. It was a small thing, but it marked a change. She looked like she belonged. Late one night, they sat near the fire. Amos spoke about his past, about a raid where his company had killed women and children, and how that day he stopped listening to orders. Ta listened, silent but present. She finally said, "You don't know me." "You don't know me." He shook his head. "No, but I know what it's like to survive and have nowhere to go." Weeks passed. The peace they'd found was fragile. One night, Amos spotted a stranger on horseback watching the cabin. He called out, but the man turned and vanished into the trees. They both knew danger was coming and that this time, they'd face it together. At first light, 3 riders appeared, 2 soldiers and the marshal, their faces hard, their orders clear. "You lied," the marshal accused. "She escaped." "No," Amos said steadily. "She's here, and she's not a prisoner." The marshal's eyes flicked to Ta, who stepped forward and said plainly, "I won't go." "You don't get to choose," he said. "She does," Amos replied. The standoff was silent but fierce. The marshal studied Amos, then finally turned, muttering about wasted potential. The soldiers followed. No shots fired, just a choice made in the cold morning light. Back inside, Amos told Ta, "It's done." She reached out, touched his face, then kissed him without hesitation. The days that followed were quiet but full, curtains finished, garden rows planted. Beams cut for the second room. They talked about building. One morning, Ta handed Amos a small woven charm, a circle with a line through it. "My mother made these," she said softly, "for protection." Amos hung it by the doorframe. Outside, spring crept in slowly. The garden grew green shoots, mornings were long by the fire, and the weight of the past seemed lighter. No paperwork. No ceremony. Just 2 people who had found the right to stay. And they did. So, what do you think? Was Amos right to defy orders and protect Ta? Or was he just putting himself and the town at risk? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's talk about justice, loyalty, and what it really means to do the right thing when the law says otherwise. Don't forget to like the video, share your story, and tell us where you're watching from. I'm curious to hear your take.